Ben will provide you with pragmatic information and examples on how to motivate the ageing workplace population whilst dealing with the existing labour market shortage. Being born on the cusp of being a Generation Yer, Ben will share with you his findings of having worked closely with many local and international organisations who are taking advantage of the ageing workplace population challenge by developing effective strategies. Ben will leave you with a provocative statement that poses that the labour market demographics are about to change enormously in the next 5 years. Baby boomers who are technologically savvy will be able to ride the wave into retirement or face extinction sooner than what they think. So, ladies and gentlemen, please make welcome Ben Gagan.
You may be aware that a few years ago in the UK, plans were being drawn up where they would require publicly listed companies to include a human capital or HR component with statistics and information in their annual report. There was a bit of an uproar from companies not wanting more red tape, so the idea was dropped. But just stop and think, how well would your company or government department or team go if the human capital reporting requirement was introduced here? Would your organisation pass the test? What if your department funding or government registration depended on your results in the following categories? Clear organisational direction and expectations, informed workforce planning, optimal organisation of work, optimal employment law compliance and structures, advanced recruiting, selection and employment marketing, tailored performance management systems including reward and recognition, and ongoing skills and knowledge management systems. So could I ask you to do two things for me now? One is take a look at that list, which is actually an HR-wise list, but very similar to what was originally put out there, and reflect upon how your organisation is performing right now in these categories: bad, just okay, or excellent. And then secondly, think of your leading competitor or a leading government department or council and reflect upon their performance in each of these categories. If we're here considering issues around the ageing workforce and the need to adjust to the changing demographics, why consider this full list of human capital aspects at all? Why not just resort to that tired old favourite that our people are our most important asset and then offer higher salaries and leave it at that? The answer is simple: nothing operates in isolation. I've seen time and time again how wrong organisations can be by taking a narrow focus and assuming that salary and recruitment strategies are the only way to solve the skills shortage issues. Don't get me wrong, in times of crisis, organisations need to make quick decisions and changes to resolve burning issues. For example, with a recent client in the Pilbara, we examined all the aspects of their operations, but the first thing we did was recommend a change to their work roster down from a 5-in-1 down to a 4-in-1, simply to stop the hemorrhaging of staff to all the nearby companies that had better rosters. That solved the immediate problem. Then we went and looked at the broader picture, knowing that nothing operates in isolation. The roster example is what the social scientists call addressing the hygiene factors, as I'm sure you're aware, and basically that's just getting rid of the bad stuff that makes employees want to leave. What are these hygiene factors? Well, the employment site Seek recently published a survey of job seekers, and this is the list of the main hygiene factors. Okay, so remember, these are the list of issues that Seek said are driving people away from organisation. What makes you want to leave your organisation? And remember that people can have issues with all or any of these. You need to make sure that you're at least not bad in these areas. You then need to work towards becoming good or great in these areas. And if you can't become great in some of the areas, perhaps some aspects are out of your control, you'll then need to think outside the square and compensate in other ways. So that's the theory. What about in practice? When HRWise conducts its attraction and retention turnaround packages, we do actually use these categories or very similar. So let's go through and see some real life examples. We've found that organisations with very clear organisational direction and expectations are on the right track. For instance, when conducting our review for the turnaround package at one well-known manufacturing business, we found that whilst there are a number of memos, post-it notes and the like floating about, there was no clear vision, goals or targets for teams, departments or the business overall. What this meant was that this lack of clarity was replaced by what we call gossip goals. In this case, throughput. Teams competed against each other and boasted about the volume produced on their shift. The gossip goal of maximum throughput badly affected the quality and yield of the output. A simple adjustment to having clearly defined goals meant thousands and thousands of dollars in raw material costs and reduced need for labour due to the reworks and damages. When I reflect upon the informed workforce planning category, I can't help but think back to an engineering manager I worked with at BHP. On his wall he had a large framed picture of an American dollar bill, and the caption said, "In God we trust, all others bring data." Successful organisations I've worked with have not reacted with panic to skills shortages and ageing workforce issues. Instead, they have systematically reviewed their organisation to produce solid information on things like workforce skills and attributes required to meet the organisation's goals, staffing levels required for each stage and scenario, current and future labour market availability per skill set, headcount and turnover stats by job department and by demographics. For instance, some companies in the resource sector have understood the need to go down to the next level of detail and get individual role statistics rather than just talk about the overall decreases in the labour market as a whole. These particular companies now know that their existing workforce will be reduced by up to 58.5% for diesel fitters and by 25 to 46% for electricians over the next 3 years. Armed with this specific information, these companies have now put in place a number of different plans. They're recruiting from the Asia-Pacific nations with good English skills, such as India and the Philippines. They're partnering with TAFEs and universities to create company-specific apprenticeships, traineeships and graduate programs. As for the next category, I've seen many examples of organisations not properly structured for success. Most organisations will have org charts and position descriptions, but it tends to be only the high-performing organisations that actually use these to directly impact the business, rather than just having something that show the new person when they start. The 3 days a finance director and I once spent with the staff of a national services organisation optimising the structures and role descriptions with measurable outputs and were hugely productive. People now knew exactly what, how, why and by when had to happen. Each operating unit and job category now had predetermined systems, tools, equipment and technologies clearly mapped out. Expectations and performance standards rose instantly, and vacancies created over time by natural attrition did not all need to be filled. I should point out that the staff input to that optimisation process was crucial, and it created its own positive momentum, and regular process reviews and process improvement sessions kept the ball rolling. There will always be a need for employment law compliance, and this requires a clear understanding of current legal obligations and a clear employee relation strategies. This helps create a professional and respectful working environment, which is important to Generation X's, Y's and baby boomers alike. There's a lot to be said for having clear policies and procedures in place to prevent discrimination claims. For instance, one evening about 9 years ago in a Wollongong distribution factory, I was approached late in the night by a group of workers who said, "Oh, the bloke operating the overhead crane, I think he's had a few drinks." That would have been instant death for something that had fallen off that crane. So thankfully there was a specific policy and procedure in place which I could follow, and I got him subtly into the room with his union rep and things like this, and after lots of threats and expletives and so on, we managed to get him safely home. Still, he did take me by surprise after I put it to him that he had been drinking. He replied, "Is that alcohol you can smell, or just the smell of my rotting teeth?" Just the kind of guy you want to bring home, you know, your daughter to bring home or something, I imagine. But so much gets said about recruitment and selection difficulties in the current boom, so I'll only make a couple of points. First, smart organisations aren't afraid to try a number of different approaches to finding staff. Yes, some of the methods take extra effort. Part-timers, semi-retirement arrangements, telecommuting, using career change people, overseas labour and so on, all provide unique challenges. But when you have the data from your informed workforce planning, you can come up with structured plans to take the pain out of these approaches. For example, one call centre we worked with established a number of part-time teams using mostly return-to-work mothers, semi-retirees, baby boomers. Extra efforts were made to train these people on the technology side of things, but after a few early challenges, these teams produced the same results as the other demographic groups, but with vastly lower turnover rates. This dramatically helped the bottom line with greatly reduced recruitment and training costs. The other point I want to make about recruitment selection is about the concept of employment marketing. Just as organisations should be making it easy for their internal and external customers to use their products and services, organisations should be making it easy for potential employees to want to join up. This means having information readily available for job seekers, having an attractive employment proposition, and being completely professional throughout the recruitment and selection process. Not all organisations are good at this. Proactive organisations are busy revamping their recruitment processes to address the job seeker's one simple question: what's in it for me? These organisations are making sure that all paper and internet documentation is focused on answering this question. These organisations are making sure that reception, HR, and anyone else involved know exactly what and what not to say, where to direct a job seeker, and who is responsible for all key steps. Job seekers also receive auto-responses specifically tailored to that role, containing pertinent information, specifically answering what's in it for me. The websites like that of National Foods answer what's in it for me in a professional way and create a momentum for the person to make contact and start the recruitment process. Most visibly, proactive organisations understand that the traditional format for newspaper and internet job ads were developed before the skills shortage and are therefore they're not good enough now. The smart ones are rewriting their job ads purely to address what's in it for me, rather than giving a long, boring history of the organisation and the position, which does nothing to set them apart from the many other jobs that are in front of the job seeker. To ensure achievement of their goals and to get the best out of their people, high-performing organisations leave nothing to chance and implement tailored performance management systems, such as benchmarking labour market information on remuneration and benefits, and create a total rewards package which clearly identifies tangible and intangible benefits. They maintain a regular employee survey system in place for groups and individuals, give their supervisors and managers people management training and coaching, and hold them accountable for people management outcomes. They ensure that all staff have involvement in decision-making processes at some level. They hold regular formal and informal discussions with each employee, and they create a working atmosphere which is respectful, friendly and positive. I mentioned total reward packages. Only last week, one of the HR Wise team was telling me about a resources company there helping with attraction and retention issues. The company's total reward package consists of salary, super and 4 weeks holiday. Employees and potential employees are looking at the package and then saying, ho-hum, or perhaps they're using that word from American TV, whatever. There are so many workplace-related benefits out there to choose from to avoid having to hear a potential employee say to you, whatever. I also mentioned employee surveying. It's absolutely critical to gain this feedback and not only to address staff concerns, but also to gauge the performance of your people managers. One national services group recently did this to improve morale and reduce employee turnover. They achieved this, but they came away with the added extra of the employees themselves suggesting a new performance-related pay system, which the managers had been afraid to raise in previous discussions with the employees. 2 crucial points on surveying your staff. 1, don't wait until they're leaving to find out what they're thinking. Be proactive, systematic, and make sure you act on the feedback. The second crucial point is to speak to individuals, and more important, particularly note what your top performers say. Rather than averaging out the feedback, create your total reward package and your overall approach according to the needs and wants of your top performers. These are the people you want to keep and to attract into your organisation, so be mindful of what they say. This now feeds back into formal and informal performance discussions and creating the right type of workplace. By having your clear performance expectations and outputs in place, you can manage people according to their own individual strengths and abilities. And this is so important as we try to balance the needs of the baby boomers, Generation X's and Y's in the workplace. You need to be aware of the broad themes or differences between the generations, but never forget that people are individuals and must be led as such. I love the quote in a recent HR survey where the Generation Y person said, "A job for life is a form of imprisonment." Now that surely is a bit different, a different sentiment to that of perhaps the baby boomer generation. But be careful when managing this person, as I feel the classic principles of people management will continue to apply regardless of the generation. Select the right person for the right role, set clear expectations, manage to those expectations and provide ongoing feedback, and create the right systems and environment for ongoing success. The final category in which organisations can gain a competitive edge in dealing with an ageing workforce is the development of ongoing skills and knowledge management systems. Having well thought out systems enables the smart organisations to attract and retain staff and also capture some of the knowledge of baby boomers as they start to move out of full-time employment. With any of these systems, they can be highly sophisticated based on the latest knowledge management technology, or they could be simple checklists, forms to fill in, or basic discussions. All of them, however, do require some planning, time and effort. The call centre example I described earlier, that involved a combination of soft skills training plus technical systems training, all of which took time, but it's always time well spent. After all, consider the following two statistics from a recent report commissioned by the Australian HR Institute. 25% of new employees decide within the first week whether or not to stay. 58% of new employees decide within the first month. So what does ongoing skills and knowledge management look like compared to similar customer service organisations I've seen? Organisations